Aloha and welcome to Stan Energy Man here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Stan Osserman coming to you live and direct from the lovely megalopolis of Kailua, Hawaii. And today we're going to do a show to kind of catch you up on what's going on around the world in hydrogen. And today's today's topics come from the Ohio Fuel Cell Coalition, which sends out a newsletter. I like their newsletter and one that I get from the California Fuel Cells Partnership. To bring you some of the stories of what's going on around the world. So the first story up is out of the publication The Hill. It says the role of hydrogen in the green economy. And I'm going to read the synopsis of this thing, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. It says, as California and the U.S. move to become more carbon neutral, there are two forms of energy transmission that must be expanded. These are electricity generated from renewable sources, such as wind, geothermal, and solar, and hydrogen gas generated from hydrolysis or electrolysis of water or obtained from the breakdown of fossil fuels with carbon capture, which is commonly referred to as steam reformation with carbon capture. And it says hydrogen will play an important role as the fuel for transportation, as well as the storage medium for electric power generation to buffer the inevitable fluctuations that you get with solar and wind energy. Now, that's maybe 6 lines of text, just a couple sentences, but it captures so much that's really important about what's going on and why hydrogen is so important in the energy sector today. I'll start with transportation. Number one, in transportation, it's all about weight. And when it comes to storing energy and putting it in a transportation system, I don't care whether it's airplanes or big ships or small ships or boats, or cars, or trucks, or big trucks, or heavy equipment, or rocket ships. You can't beat hydrogen. Energy density in hydrogen is so great that you just can't beat it. So this article really focuses in on that. Hydrogen produced from natural renewable resources is going to be critical for the transportation sector for a bunch of reasons, but that's one of the key things is just for the weight itself. Number two is the grid. Hydrogen's important, especially if you're going to be looking at renewable, intermittent renewable like solar and wind, because you always have to store energy for when it's not daytime for PV or the wind's not blowing for wind power, but also just for backup power on the grid long term. You always need what they call spinning reserve, and hydrogen and things like flywheels make great spinning reserves because they can be called up pretty quickly. Actually, the best deal would be a combination of ultracapacitors, flywheels, and hydrogen as your spinning reserve system instead of running a really inefficient generator. So the rest of this article in The Hill would be really interesting to look at because it captures right off the bat the real importance. And I've seen at least 3 articles this week and videos that I can tell that the media is finally catching on to the real value of hydrogen. The second story comes to us from Japan. It's from Nikkei Asia. That's Nikkei, Asia, out of Tokyo. And it says, U.S. hydrogen fuel cell maker Plug Power, one of my favorites by, in case you haven't learned, which counts Walmart and Amazon as its clients, is planning to expand its businesses in China, Vietnam, and South Korea through a joint venture with conglomerate SK Group. Earlier this year, South Korea's SK made a $1.6 billion investment in the NASDAQ-listed company, Plug Power. And through the joint venture, the two companies are planning to set up a factory in South Korea by 2023 to produce fuel cells and electrolyzers, that's the stuff that makes hydrogen, that extract green hydrogen from water using renewable energy. That's that electrolysis process I talked about. So why is this important? There's a real focus in Asia on hydrogen. Japan is focusing on it. They have 2 car companies that are in production with fuel cell electric vehicles, Honda, and Toyota. Honda makes a Clarity, Toyota makes a Mirai. And if you haven't seen the 2021 Mirai, it's a beautiful, beautiful vehicle. South Korea also makes not one production, but 2 production vehicles in Hyundai alone. There's other South Korean companies that are making trucks and other vehicles. Vietnam, a lot of people don't realize this, but Vietnam is actually becoming a big powerhouse in Asia in terms of export industry and agriculture, rice production included. And of course, China has such a huge pollution problem. They're super focusing on electric transportation. You can see where Plug Power and other companies are focusing on Asia um, to set up companies and use the labor force in the region to make products where they're going to be used and save all that transportation cost. The next article comes from Commercial UAV News. UAV stands for Unmanned Aerial Vehicles. So Commercial UAV News. It says one of the world's first commercialized hydrogen fuel cells for drones and mobile robots has been developed. So Doosan, kind of a well-established name in the fuel cell business, Doosan Mobility Innovation (DMI), a subsidiary of the Doosan Group, was established in 2016 to leverage Doosan Group's industry-leading hydrogen fuel cell technology to develop hydrogen fuel cell power packs for mobile devices and mobility solutions using it. Currently, the DMI hydrogen fuel cell drones are being used for critical applications such as delivering emergency supplies to remote locations and monitoring large agricultural areas and vast solar farms. In October of 2019, after securing the reliable durability and stability of the hydrogen fuel cell, DMI achieved commercialization and mass production of a 2.6 kilowatt hydrogen fuel cell, the DP30 power pack. If you want to learn more about that technology, hey, look up that article in Commercial UAV News and just probably Google that and Doosan Group, and you can learn about that power pack. But fuel cells have been looked at for everything from literally cell phones and small UAV aerial drones for doing surveillance or for doing photography, mapping land, aerial photography for commercial purposes and things, all the way up to large scale aircraft. It's scale. That's the other cool thing about hydrogen. It's scalable. It can do it all. The next article comes to us from Europe, and the publication is Truck News, and it's Volvo sees greener future in hydrogen fuel cells. This Volvo Group Chief Technology Officer Lars Svenskust clearly sees a future in fuel cell electric vehicles, a generation of trucks that will draw their power from hydrogen. But it would be a mistake to believe he expects such equipment to fill every need. We are working with three technologies in parallel. We don't believe in one silver bullet. That's actually a really good strategy. He stresses, noting that battery electric vehicles and even combustion engines will have a role to play in the fossil-free future. All three major cornerstones in our strategy going forward. I don't see any retirement date for all of the combustion engines, and that's really important. And if you watched in my last show, I talk about the transition, and there's a big problem with trying to transition away from fossil fuels too quickly. The first one is it's going to be really, really expensive if you try and make the move too fast. As anybody that does business knows, when you put a high demand pressure on any economic system, the price goes up when there's no supply. Right now, there's not much of a supply of the clean technology. And if you try and push it so fast, you're going to be paying a premium price for everything that comes out clean. You're better off just pacing yourself and trying to clean up and get the low-hanging fruit done first and use the internal combustion engines where they are best suited, which is like, for example, in hybrid vehicles where you're using a smaller internal combustion engine to run a generator to make an electric vehicle. So there's three technologies that, let me explain to you. Hydrogen makes electricity just like batteries can give off electricity. So you have electric vehicles that run on hydrogen. You have electric vehicles that run on battery power, and you have to plug them in and charge them. And you have electric vehicles that run on gasoline or diesel, because the diesel engine is small, runs at its most optimum performance, and it runs a generator that makes electricity. The electricity drives the motors in the vehicle. Those are the three things that Volvo's looking at. That's why they're explaining that even fossil fuel is important. And I agree. There is no silver bullet. As my friend Paul Pontio on the Big Island says, it's silver buckshot. You got to look at all the solutions, all the options. The other thing besides the price is safety. Too many times we rush into a technology and we sell it and we sell it and we push it hard because it's the answer. But a lot of the subcontractors, the people developing the technologies, they're not keeping up as fast, and they're not as careful in some cases as they need to be. And that's when you run into problems. You can actually have serious safety issues if you rush into these technologies without letting really experienced, really talented people work to refine it to where they know it works. I own a Toyota Mirai, and I'm so impressed with the the level of detail that they put into the entire system. It's just really amazing. Even little things like if your 12-volt battery fails, how do you get the doors unlocked and things like that? You actually have systems in there that let you do that. And that's the kind of what I talk about critical analysis. When you're designing systems, you have to do a good critical analysis. You have to look ahead and say, now what happens if this fails? What happens if that fails? And that's where it's really important that you take your time and do that critical analysis before you step into a new technology. It's nice to see that VoLo's got that picture. The next article comes from H2 View. It says high power set to commercialize its hydrogen fuel cell for delivery drones. High Power, that's HYPOWER, all one word, Lab, a company specializing in hydrogen fuel cell research and development, has completed the development of a hydrogen fuel cell drone for delivery, as well as design of a drone-specific fuel cell mission production system. The company has been participating in research and development of hydrogen fuel cells exclusively for drones with the Russian IPCP RAS, a Hydrogen Fuel Cell Research Center, obviously in Russia. So if you like Russians, check this article out from H2 View. It says this comes from Renewable Energy Magazine. Demonstrator delivery vehicle for hydrogen fuel cell technology and development. It says the first demonstrator vehicle of a novel new hydrogen fuel cell technology. It sounds kind of oxymoronic. Hydrogen fuel cells have been around a long time. Is in development by Mahle Power, MAHLE Powertrain, acting in partnership with hydrogen fuel cell specialist Bramble Energy. Mahle Powertrain is helping to optimize the integration of Bramble's energy printed circuit boards in fuel cell. They call it the PCVFC technology. Within the powertrain of a Renault Kangaroo ZE. The vehicle, which will be unveiled in 2021, will showcase the reduced cost, high performance potential of high power density liquid cooled fuel cells. Hydrogen is certainly a viable option for the light commercial sector, said Jonathan Hall, Mahle's Powertrain's head of research and advanced engineering. We are delighted to be working with Bramble Energy on such an exciting and timely project. There is absolutely so much research, development, and commercialization. Commercialization is the key. So much going on in the hydrogen world. People are looking at solid oxide fuel cells for going straight from methane and other like bio gases from digester systems and things like that directly into energy. It's just amazing. If you get into reading all the articles on hydrogen, you would just be blown away. That's why it's hard for me to understand why more people just don't get hydrogen right off the bat, but I guess there's a lot to absorb. I tell you what, before we go off with any other articles, because the next one talks about Toyota, we'll take a quick break here and we'll be back in 60 seconds to catch up on some more hydrogen news. Hey, welcome back to Stan the Energy Man. We're talking about hydrogen news from around the world this week. And the next story comes to us from a publication called Electrive. Toyota launches fuel cell cooperation with Eneos, Eneos. Toyota and the Japan energy company Eneos have entered into a partnership to advance hydrogen mobility. The core of the cooperation is the expansion of Toyota's future projects, Woven City, into a hydrogen-based modern city. The goal for the model at the city, Woven City, is at the foot. It's at the foot of Mount Fuji, and CO2 neutrality is kind of the goal, not only in everyday mobility but in the entire life of the city. The people, the urban infrastructure itself, says Toyota, is the goal. Residents should live in harmony with nature and technology, smart, connected, and sustainable. You know, that's really, I've always admired Toyota for the long forward thinking. You know, we have the Mirai today, and I guess the earliest models were from 2016, 2017 timeframe, but they spent almost 20 years and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars developing that car and putting it into production. Honda did the same thing. Hyundai did the same thing. But Toyota was really on the cutting edge of all this stuff. And they look at that technology, the hydrogen technology, as a holistic ecosystem on the energy side. And it's really important that we all look at it that way. For too many years, all the way through the Industrial Revolution till today, we just accept what's cheapest, what's best, what's fastest, and gets us what we want, instead of looking out for what's the best in the long term for everyone, for our citizens, for our health, for our economies. We need to, for the environment, we need to start taking that longer look. And Toyota is one of the companies that really focuses hard on this longer look. I'm always excited to hear about what Toyota is doing. This is from a really good place. If you're going to take a transportation look at hydrogen, Motor Trend magazine, and it asks the age-old question: are hydrogen and fuel cells finally ready for prime time? Question mark. And it starts off: I've subscribed to the theory that hydrogen is the fuel of the future, and it always will be, for almost 30 years on this beat. But a confluence of recent developments suggests maybe we're nearing a tipping point for the universe's smallest known molecule, actually an atom. And it says accelerated development of fuel cells for use in heavy trucking promises to boost infrastructure and bring economies of scale needed to hasten light-duty fuel cell electric vehicles and their adoption. Proliferation of renewable energy is increasing demand for ways to store surplus grid power, which can be done using hydrogen, and a novel means of inexpensively produced green hydrogen is emerging. What they're talking about here is something that I wish more utilities would recognize. As you put more and more intermittent renewables like solar and wind into your grid, you end up creating an instability problem for the utility. They get to about 18 to 20% of intermittent renewable on their grid. And if they're in a climate where there's lots of clouds moving in and out, or the wind blows and doesn't blow, it creates a real big balancing problem for utility companies. But with hydrogen, you can overproduce all of the solar and wind that you want, make sure you have plenty of electricity when you need it, and when you're overproducing, you take all that energy and make hydrogen. In other words, you have an electrolyzer that can load follow and take all the extra energy that you can give it, or it can shut down and take none of it if you really need all the power being produced by your solar and wind. That's a big key to how it helps the grid. And at the same time, it turns transportation green. We need to really get utility companies to understand that concept. This next story comes out of Aju Business Daily. It says Hyundai and Oil Bank set up power production joint venture using hydrogen fuel cells. This is out of Seoul. Hyundai Oil Bank agreed to set up a joint venture with the public power company for the production of electricity using hydrogen fuel cells. The deal is part of a broad roadmap to unveil South Korea's top shipbuilding group to establish a hydrogen value chain by 2030. That combines the infrastructure and technology competitiveness of affiliates to produce and utilize hydrogen on land and at sea. Like I said, in transportation, it's all about weight. And when it comes to weight, it doesn't matter whether you're talking boats, airplanes, dirigibles, rocket ships, cars, or trucks. It's going to make the energy per square inch or per pound is going to make a huge difference in all transportation. Hyundai obviously gets that because they're ahead on all the vehicles so far, with 2 production vehicles out there, but they get it. Seattle Times has this story. I'm not sure how to pronounce this company. Chehalis aims to have Washington State's first hydrogen fueling station. As you know, California is probably up to a little over 50 stations operating right now, but it takes a lot of government money input into that effort, because standing up standalone stations when there's not much demand for the stations until they build the vehicles up is a tough nut to crack. But Washington State has stepped up to the plate, and Washington State appears to be on the brink of a renewable energy revolution. And Lewis County is positioning itself to be on the front lines of one particular energy source. With a combined $4.45 million in grants secured from Centralia Coal Transition Board and the state legislature, supplemental capital budget, the state's first hydrogen fueling station is poised to be built in Chehalis sometime within the next year. And I've seen this article pop up twice in different newsletters, and it's obviously something that's a big deal, because California is just down the hill from Washington State. A lot of people travel up and down that West Coast, and when you get out of California, you're kind of in big trouble if you have a hydrogen fuel cell car. This is starting to build out that hydrogen infrastructure, at least along the western seaboard, just like we got states on the eastern seaboard doing the same thing. And then you got my friend Chris McWhinney from Millennium Rain, who's building what he calls a transcontinental hydrogen highway that goes all the way from California to New York. And he's hell bent on getting that done, and I congratulate him. I've got a couple other stories, and these aren't particular individual stories that I've seen only one place. But I've seen a couple places, and the first, they both involve Tesla, Elon Musk's company that produces one of the best looking battery electric vehicles on the planet, one of the most popular for sure, and they're going to be around a while, I'd say. But one of the things that hasn't been talked about publicly a whole lot, and is a game changer as far as I'm concerned, is that Tesla's batteries, they use what we call lithium cobalt technology batteries, lithium ion batteries. They have a big problem that Tesla doesn't like to talk about, that people that use these batteries don't like to talk about. And that is, they happen to have a thermal runaway issue. That's why you can't take lithium batteries and put them in your luggage on an airplane. That's why you can't take hoverboards and other equipment that uses lithium batteries and stuff them in your baggage. Because if they catch on fire, if they have a thermal issue, and they're put away where nobody can get to them and isolate them, the fire will burn at a really high temperature and cause great damage, cause other things to start burning, and it's really hard to put the fire out. The lithium cobalt technology is very dangerous. And I showed a picture of a Tesla vehicle that left the roadway and hit a tree. And the tree, when it did that, the batteries were compromised. The battery package was impacted, and the vehicle caught on fire. And literally, there's nothing but a metal skeleton. And if you've seen a vehicle fire with a Tesla battery, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, you just threw it up there on the screen. That's what And that happens so quickly. My advice to people that have Tesla vehicles is, if for whatever reason, it's really rare, this doesn't happen every day, but if you're driving a Tesla vehicle and you get in an accident where you smell the smoke or you see the fire start, just get out of the car. Don't try and pick up your laptop and your purse or whatever. Get out of the car, because this fire burns so quickly, so intensely, gives off such noxious fumes. You're in big trouble. But Tesla is finally breaking the code on this. They are switching their chemistry. It'll take them a while to do it, but they're switching to lithium ferrous phosphate technology, which was actually Sony and several other companies. I think Panasonic was involved too in some experiments with lithium ferrous phosphate. Lithium ferrous phosphate is much more stable, much more recyclable. Most of the battery is recyclable, unlike the lithium cobalt batteries. And it's also much more enduring, or it's got deep cycle capabilities, and it's got a longer cycle life than the lithium cobalt technology. So Tesla is doing something that I think is going to be game changer for them. They're changing their battery chemistry to lithium ferrous phosphate. So look for articles on that. There's also another really interesting article that kind of starts to span into politics a little bit. Is the honeymoon over for Tesla in the PRC? And this is because a lot of people don't realize it, but in the big geopolitical picture, a lot of American companies went to China at the invitation of China and with the encouragement of the US government to help China pull itself out of literally third world status to be a modern country. And a lot of American companies went over there with their technology, with their organizational skills, with their industry establishment, their logistics knowledge, and helped China build some really impressive industries. And China has then now become a really huge marketplace. Huge. US has 3.5 million people. China has 1.3 billion people. The market in China is 5 times what it is here in the United States, roughly. So our companies like going over there. The labor is cheap. The regulations are easy. You know, when you're in a totalitarian government, hey, if you tell the government change something, they can change on a dime. They can move quickly because they make the rules, and they don't have to sit there and go through a bunch of committees or put out in public for opinions and stuff. You just make the rule and it changes. American companies like that kind of flexibility and like that kind of aggressiveness. So a lot of companies, including Tesla, have set up big plants inside the People's Republic of China. And the Chinese government initially gave Tesla and Elon Musk kind of a broad leeway in how he did business there. But the honeymoon is starting to wear thin. China wants Elon Musk's technology and his creativity and his ability to do things in space with his SpaceX program. And they want to learn everything they can from Elon. But once they finish milking Elon Musk for all of his hard work, they're probably going to ditch him. And the signs are starting to show that the Bill and Melinda Gates scenario and things with Elon Musk are starting to go south in China. So keep an eye on that on your regular daily news. Know that there's a lot of companies in China that are being set up for a rough road ahead when China decides to play hardball with them. That's going to do it for this week's Stan the Energy Man. And next week we're going to try and see if we can get a presentation by HCAP, my old stomping grounds with the state of Hawaii. They've just done a really great PowerPoint presentation, and we'll try and bring that to you. Talks about a lot of what's going on in Hawaii and what's going on in the future. So until next week, Tuesday, Stan the Energy Man signing off. Aloha.